trigger on this, on your stock. On your stock, you can pull the stock forward and backward with trigger.
Whoa, that's pretty neat. What does that even do? Oh.
Why does this music make me so unreasonably happy while killing people?
Childhood nostalgia?
Exactly.
I actually don't like this game. Nostalgia is a very powerful thing. The love that people have for things they experienced in the past can be overwhelmingly influential. It can cause you to see qualities in a product that are over the sum of its remaining parts. It can cause a greater than average connection between a product and its consumer. It can cause those who attempt to tarnish it to go into a fit of rage even. And it can even cause some to internally embellish their own memories toward a product. Hi, I'm Ross Wood, and this is not gonna be fun. Whenever it comes to games that people will often tell you are the greatest of all time, you typically hear the same names. Super Mario Bros. Changed the game for 2D platformers. Half-Life changed the game for first-person shooters. Sorry, Doom. Street Fighter 2 changed the game for fighters, and Tetris just changed the game into squares. But if you were to look up one of those thousands of lists cataloging the greatest games on the NES, the SNES, the N64, or the GameCube, you and I both know before we even click on that article or video, Zelda will be close to, if not the highest number on that list. And I can't really say I blame them. From what I've seen, Zelda has been responsible for basically pioneering the adventure genre of games. It had many imitators, sure, but none did it as well as Zelda always did. But okay, here's my next question. Why don't I like them? Because you're stupid and you can't understand the complexities of the puzzles because all you care about is action and stupid combos because you're dumb. Yes. No, really, he's right, but allow me to explain my case. Long ago, before the age of the simp, summer vacations meant something incredible, much more than just having to wake up and get dressed because mommy made us all go to school. It meant waking up and getting dropped off at our cousin's house for the day, while mom and dad were at work. But, in an effort to stave off boredom, we would always pack up our N64 and take it with us. We would have about 5 people who would want to play video games, so we had to have some sort of way to let everyone have fun. And this was back when games were only around 16 to 32 megabytes and still $60. So we had to think carefully about what games we asked for. Do we ask for this 4-player fighting game where most everyone could play and the winner could switch off? Or do we get this 20+ hour adventure game where one person would play while everyone else gets bored and upset that it's not their turn? I'm sure you could assume that that was a no-brainer for us. Not only for my brother and I, but for the parents buying it too. Back whenever Ocarina of Time had just come out, it was making quite a name for itself. We would constantly hear people talking about it, or we would have people ask us what we thought of it, but we never had an interest in it. I don't know why my big brother didn't, but I personally didn't because it just never grabbed me. I wish I had a bigger reason than that, but I don't. The game never looked all that interesting to me, so I never gave it the time of day. Fast forward to 2011 and 3DS Remake came out. I was 15 at this point and starting to make my own money, so I thought I would go and try to jump onto this phenomenon myself. So how did my first adventure through the land of Hyrule go, you might ask? I got to Jabu Jabu's belly and put it down for some reason. Fast forward again, this time to 2018. I was a year into making videos on this channel and my older brother had to come home for a week and he let me borrow his copy of Breath of the Wild. I won't go too much into it, but I made a video on that game that I absolutely do not recommend you watch because it wasn't very good at making stuff yet. But, long story short, I think Breath of the Wild is a crowning achievement, not only for Zelda, but for video games as a whole, and I will now be picking up its sequel, day 1. But, the question remains, would my love for this game push me to give traditional Zelda another go? No, it wouldn't. So, fast forward for the last time until about a month ago when I asked you guys what the video you wanted to see after the Lost Planet retrospective was. And I should have been surprised, but I wasn't, when you all said you wanted me to talk about the most casually avoided gaming sin of all time, why I don't really care for Ocarina of Time. You guys don't want this relationship to work out, do you? Alright, let's do this. So here we are. After waiting so long to play this game to the end, did I end up loving my time with it like everyone else has? Have I seen it as the greatest game of all time like so many else have? You clicked on the video already. You guys already know I still really don't like it. Now hold on, I can hear the hipster Twitter defensive launching already, saying something like, "Oh, here we go, another stick to toss on the fire because Egoraptor has ruined this game's reputation beyond repair. He pointed out the worst of the game and now it's all anyone talks about." And I can see your frustrations, truly. As a Sonic fan, I really know what you mean there.
This shit sucks!
And yes, while it is true that I have seen the infamous video countless times and I appreciate it a great deal, I don't think I agree with everything he says, and I also think he overlooks some pretty big points as well. Honestly, I don't think one person can ruin the reputation of a game like this, because Ocarina is kind of bigger than just one person's criticisms. But hey, that's why we're here. Structurally, Ocarina was a standout when it hit shelves all the way back when, and it honestly is still pretty unique by modern standards. The game sees you going through a large open world all at your own discretion. The scope of the game is what I will immediately commend. This open world is something that must have been the most incredible thing for kids to dive into back in the day. With so many people to interact with, so many secrets to find, so many side quests to keep track of, it must have been crazy immersive. And for those who learned the ins and outs of this game as a kid, they probably had a very strong drive to go back for a second, a third time, and try to see how quickly they could reach the final challenge and overcome it again. Okay, now that I've said my nice things, let me offer my contentions. Take yourself out of your own mind and try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who hasn't tried to beat their any % run for a third time this week. A lot of these puzzles are obtuse and often give minimal information on the solution, or the solution is just told to you by an NPC beforehand, and the game expects you to just hold on to that information until the appropriate time. This becomes a game of remembering things you're supposed to do, not so much figuring out the solution by context clues and detective work. But it's also very tiring to someone like me who really finds that kind of structure exhausting. I did grow accustomed to it later on, but it's because it fixed the problem I had with the way it's built. And fix isn't even the right word for it. When the game has all these potential solutions for problems and puzzles that you may or may not have, it can get very confusing. Like, it's that problem that arises when you're in the middle of a long dungeon and you hit a problem that you've tried everything on, so you have that dilemma of not wanting to leave the dungeon and try your luck somewhere else to possibly find the solution. But then, that will ultimately waste time because you could potentially run into another dungeon that presents the same problem but with a different item. This isn't even really a problem, it's just a preference that I feel really strongly for. There isn't anything inherently bad about these things. Some people love that scavenger hunt mentality for special key items. I just prefer to have everything available for me in an open world game. It's not exactly a fair comparison, but look at Breath of the Wild. In that game, the open world has literally everything open to you at your discretion from Jump Street. There is nothing you can't go do if you have the skill for it. In Ocarina, it has the same type of open world, but with lots of stop signs that halt your progress to the next exciting challenge. It's not fair to compare decades of experience in the franchise to the first 3D attempt, but I'm saying this is how I prefer my open world games. Fair being fair, I do have to acknowledge that this kind of design does eliminate the reward of new items, as being able to do anything at a moment's notice would mean that you effectively couldn't have any challenge designed around items acquired in the middle of the journey. The dungeons in Ocarina were easily my favorite parts, especially towards the end of the game. There were such straightforward challenges that asked you to recognize the patterns and use your head to find the solution. Early dungeons in the game didn't quite stick the landing for me. Maybe because the game was a little obtuse, or maybe I hadn't acclimated to the puzzle style yet, but those early hours were a real trudge for me. Even during dungeons, which again are my favorite part of Ocarina. And when you were late in the game, it was great to see all these tools see use in conjunction with one another. I liked the Fire Temple a lot. Ganon's Castle felt like a bunch of bite-sized dungeons, which was pretty cool. And I had a really great moment in the Shadow Temple, where I was trying to figure out how to cross this large chasm. I had looked at it from several angles and couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe I had to hookshot onto this chain and something would happen, but when I kept trying it, my chain would keep coming back earlier. Maybe the guillotine had a physical hitbox that wouldn't let me hookshot past it or something. But then I realized I can see. And as soon as I turned on the lens of truth, it was that infamous, oh man, come on moment. I did have some great little moments of discovery throughout my playthrough. And yeah, everyone has to mention it at least once, but the water temple was lame. Cards on the table though, I had a guide with me when I was going through it. Of course I've heard the horror stories and I didn't want to be the millionth person to bitch about it. It would do no good to badmouth it. Everyone knows it's confusing and slow and awful, so echoing all that stuff won't bring anything new to the conversation. Mechanically, it is easily the lowest point of the game, requiring constant switching between gameplay and menuing. It was so tedious. But it wasn't just the water temple that made me realize how poorly this game has aged mechanically. For as much as I praised it, fumbling through the Eye of Truth and hover boots in the Shadow Temple got on my nerves when combined with how they had to compete for attention with all my other tools at the same time. And it never really got fixed from the beginning to the end. If it wasn't the blue fire in the ice areas, it was equipping key items to show an NPC. But that just scratches the surface, my friends. There were so many times when I had no idea what the game wanted me to be feeling. Like when Saria is talking to Link before she leaves, she's telling him how much she'll miss him and all this other emotional stuff just for him to... What the f is that? Or how about when Ganondorf looks lost in thought right here? It wouldn't look out of place for a dribble of saliva to be running out of his mouth. That stuff just looked hilarious for all the wrong reasons. Not to mention all the little glitches and hiccups along the way. And the camera is so terrible. There were certain times when I could slip the camera into the wall to give myself an edge, but is that honestly a praise that I should levy at the game? I could also use a Game Shark to break the game to my advantage, and that wouldn't be worth noting. What is worth noting is how often the camera leaves you open to take damage. But in all honesty, combat was just kinda there for me the whole time. I mean, you have several moves like a swipe, a slash, a jumping slash, a chargeable spin, and a block. These are all well and good, but they don't serve much of a purpose besides where your strikes land. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds incredibly important. It would be very important in just about every other video game centered around sword combat, but the enemies in Ocarina are a complete stick in the spokes for this game's combat sandbox. Let me explain. See, most enemy types give you, the player, so little information on what the proper method is to fight them, that the number and variety of attacks can become more of a checklist than anything else. You could very well spend lots of the encounters just wildly attacking the enemies just for them to block and circle strafe around you. Again, I know enemies blocking your attacks isn't inherently a negative, but when every enemy, big or small, behaves this way, come on. I mean, watch my first encounter with the Tektites on the way up to Death Mountain. I know it's difficult for the veterans in the audience to watch someone being given the work by such a simple enemy, but watch. I'm still new to how the game controls at this point, with the different attacks being thrown out depending on the direction of the input. I try to attack him like I would have, with careful use of my moveset, but I start taking some hits while making little headway. And again, I know Zelda isn't Bayonetta, but I would like for enemies to do a little more than act and react at the most basic level. Eventually you'll start spamming attacks, hoping to land any sort of hit, and you'll start getting results, but it makes fighting enemies a total inconvenience when you have to go through the same song and dance every single time you encounter one of them. It makes you a much more malicious player. finding patterns that the enemies will exhibit and just abusing them, instead of engaging the enemies in combat because it's fun. And you could say, again, that's how challenges are supposed to be designed. There's a way to beat it, and you have to find it in order to know how to overcome that challenge. You are correct, but first and most importantly, that's repetitive and gets stale quickly. This is actually a problem with most combat-focused games, as once the initial pattern of combat emerges, it can be difficult to break away from that established mold without new enemy variety being introduced to force a change in tactics. And to add to that point, let's say you learn every enemy's weakness and can immediately defeat them without any effort. Does combat not become more of a pace breaker if it's only there to slow down your forward progress? Again, fair being fair, if you like the combat in Ocarina, then this probably isn't a big deal. But we can draw a sharp contrast by looking at a game we mention frequently on this channel, Kingdom Hearts 2. In that game, combat only hinders your forward progress if the game's trying to teach you about a new enemy or a mechanic. So required fights all serve a purpose to the design, as well as an admittedly junk food-esque pleasure with the spectacle of it all. And non-required fights can be skipped at your own discretion. Compared again to Ocarina, there are fights thrown at you in the beginning, middle, and end that all feel like padding before you move into the next area or room in a dungeon, and I just found the experience kinda tedious. The boss fights are a bit better, but predictable. If they weren't incredibly easy to take down, they were made to be equally frustrating. Bongo Bongo was annoying for how much he broke your lock on. Chaos was pretty lame because of that grab attack that takes forever. Ganon's first phase was lame because I kept getting knocked down to the bottom level or just missing the jumps. And it's pretty funny that he just waited patiently for me to get back up though. Yeah, Ganon? He's a total bro, dude. And Shadow Link is just a broken fight altogether. I've seen all the videos and I know that you can cheese him with the Megaton Hammer, but I wanted to actually fight him, because this kind of fight is cool, or it should be cool. But I'm unsure if this is a bug or what, but he stands far less of a chance if you don't lock onto him and just keep swinging at him. His defenses are impenetrable if you have him targeted, but he's helpless if you don't. Outside of all these things, the fight is actually a challenge, but there are so many ways around it, it seems a bit too easy to stumble into one of those and just come out ahead, intended or not. But the Iron Knuckle was what I was looking forward to fighting the whole time. Egoraptor hyped them up so well, and I thought I was in for such an actual treat. But no, I found out a pattern that consistently worked. It got a little interesting when I had to fight two at once, but not once I turned on the spell that just makes you invulnerable. But even beyond that, the game was never explicitly challenging. I always made sure to stop by Kakariko Graveyard and fill up my empty bottles with fairies, so I essentially had 2 max revives that activated upon death in my inventory at all times. And besides the temporary invulnerability, what else is magic good for in this game? Din's fire never really helped in combat at all. Farore's wind helped a few times in reducing backtracking, and that's it. And Nehru's love just helped me comfortably breeze through most of the encounters toward the end of the game. So overall, there are workarounds for just about every aspect of Ocarina's encounters. And if that's a good thing for you, that's awesome, but it makes the game just a little too boring for me. But Rossi Poo, you used all the workarounds that make the game boring. Is that fair? You know, maybe it's not. I don't know, but that's a totally fair point. I did use the spell that seems to break the game, but it was an invulnerability spell. I would have used it in any other game as well. Would you just pass a Starman in Mario? No, of course not. And once again, I'm so thankful that this game exists and normalized how cameras work in a 3-dimensional space. But this is so busted. I've been spoiled by modern camera systems in games, and it's really difficult to give Ocarina slack with this, because on top of all the other nuisances in combat, this is the fidgety, glitchy cherry on top. I have taken far more breaks from playing Ocarina of Time than pretty much any other game that I reviewed, most of which I marathon as much as possible for as long as possible. If I'm not playing the game, I'm eating, sleeping, or at my day job. And it's gonna be the same exact way for the next video when I look at Ghost of Tsushima. But with this one, I got exhausted flipping through the menus and long-winded combat that I just took breaks to do other stuff frequently. As I have said many times throughout this video, I'm glad this game exists. And I'm not just mentioning it again to have you put down those pitchforks. I mean, it must have been so engaging to constantly try to chip away at this game over weeks or months as a kid. Like, every time you hear that jingle, it was like you just unlocked the next piece of this massive puzzle. Walking around this massive game, probably doing things far outside of the intended order, and trying to juggle this massive pool of information that doesn't seem connected at first, just to realize every little thing is so super important to everything else. It must have been insane. It 100% laid the foundation for what adventure games are, and eventually action games would be. No one was ahead of the curve quite like this game was, and that's enough to elevate it to a legendary status in my book. I may not have enjoyed this game as a whole, and in fact, I may only enjoy it in spirit, but I can still appreciate it, as well as appreciate the way it changed the lives of so many people. There is so much amazing content focused on Ocarina of Time specifically. Off the top of my head, I think of Nate Wants to Battle's album, Songs of Time. As someone who never played the game, I still really enjoyed listening to this, and consuming several other pieces of media centered around this timeless game. And now I can say I've beaten it. But I'm curious now, if I didn't quite enjoy this game, what Zelda game would I enjoy? I doubt Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess, but hey, those two games undoubtedly have fans, and who knows, I might be one of them and not know it yet. Should I give the Wind Waker a shot later on for having a bigger focus on combat and that incredible art style? I even hear there's a talking boat! Would I appreciate the odd qualities of Majora's Mask? Maybe the 2D Zeldas are more my speed. Or should I just wait until Breath of the Wild 2 comes out? I'll await your suggestions in the comments below. Just try not to flame me too hard for not liking your favorite game, Dad. I'm sorry. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.